Have you ever wondered why one giant bovine can become a normal food in one part of the world, while another animal that looks almost like its twin can be treated completely differently? Both are large, powerful mammals. Both produce milk. Both can work on farms. Both can provide meat. And in many places, both are important sources of food. So why do some cultures eat cattle but avoid buffalo, while other cultures eat buffalo regularly and treat cattle very differently? The surprising answer is that there is no universal rule. Buffalo are absolutely eaten in many parts of the world. Water buffalo are especially important across Asia, where they have traditionally provided milk, meat, farm power, and other resources. So the real mystery isn't why don't humans eat buffalo? It's why did different societies decide that cows and buffalo should have such different roles? And the answer takes us far beyond taste. It begins with something humans have always used to decide what belongs on the dinner table. For most of human history, people didn't simply ask, can I eat this? Can this animal give me milk? Can it pull a plow? Can it reproduce? Can it provide income? Can I keep it through difficult times? And sometimes, much more importantly, does my society consider eating it acceptable? That last question can completely change an animal's destiny. In many societies, cattle have historically been valued for much more than meat. They can provide milk. Their offspring can become future livestock. They can provide manure. And in agricultural societies, cattle have also been used for pulling carts and doing farm work. So imagine a farmer hundreds or thousands of years ago. You have one cow, you could kill it today and get meat. Or you could keep it alive and continue receiving valuable products and labor from it. That changes the calculation completely. An animal doesn't have to be eaten to be useful. Sometimes its greatest value comes from staying alive. And buffalo developed a very different relationship with humans in many parts of Asia. Water buffalo are particularly well adapted to wet environments and have traditionally been closely connected with farming, especially rice cultivation. They can provide milk, they can provide farm labor, they can help work difficult agricultural land, and eventually they can also become meat. In many traditional farming systems, buffalo were essentially multi-purpose agricultural machines that happened to be alive. That makes the story even more interesting, because if an animal is valuable for work, farmers may hesitate to slaughter it while it is still productive. Instead, it can remain part of the household economy for years. Then, when the animal becomes too old or no longer useful for work, its meat may become a secondary product. Historical FAO descriptions of Southeast Asian farming systems even note buffalo being used for farm power, manure, and household income, with meat becoming a byproduct when animals were too old or no longer fit for work. So the same animal can be viewed completely differently depending on the farming system around it. But there's another force that can be even more powerful: religion and tradition. In India, for example, cattle have a special cultural and religious significance for many Hindus. That doesn't mean every Indian person has the same dietary practices. India is incredibly diverse. But the cultural importance of cattle has strongly influenced how cattle are treated and how beef is viewed in many communities. At the same time, buffalo occupy a different cultural and economic position. And here's the part that surprises many people. India is a major producer of buffalo meat. Buffalo meat is commonly called Kara beef in some industry contexts, and it has become an important part of India's meat economy and international trade. So, if you imagine India as a place where no bovine meat is eaten, the reality is much more complicated. Cow and buffalo are not culturally interchangeable animals. They may look similar, but humans have assigned them different meanings. And those meanings can influence farming, economics, law, and food. Now travel somewhere else. In some regions, buffalo are strongly associated with dairy production. Buffalo milk is particularly rich and is important in foods such as cheese, yogurt, and ghee. That means a buffalo can have enormous value without ever being raised primarily for meat. And the same principle applies to cattle. In some countries, cattle are raised specifically for beef. The animals are bred for growth, muscle, and meat production. In other places, cattle are primarily associated with dairy. In still others, they have historically been valued as draft animals. So when someone asks, why do we eat cows here but not there? They are really asking about an entire agricultural system. Because food doesn't exist separately from farming. Farmers raise the animals that make sense for their environment. Consumers develop preferences around those animals. Religions and traditions influence what people consider acceptable. Markets reward certain products, and eventually those decisions become so normal that people stop questioning them. This is how a food culture is created. But there's another fascinating difference between cows and buffalo: their environments. Water buffalo evolved and were domesticated in environments where their ability to handle heat and wet conditions could be extremely useful. They are particularly associated with wet agricultural landscapes. That made them valuable in places where cattle might not always be the best choice for certain types of farm work. In rice-growing regions, for example, buffalo have traditionally been used for plowing wet fields. So geography can influence economics. Economics can influence farming. Farming can influence culture. And culture can influence what humans eat. It's a giant chain. And once that chain becomes established, changing it isn't easy. Imagine two villages. In the first village, people have raised cattle for generations. In the second village, buffalo became the traditional farm animal. The animals work the fields. Their milk becomes an important food. Their manure becomes useful fertilizer. And eventually, their meat becomes part of the local food system. Neither village necessarily sat down one day and decided, let's make this animal our food. The system evolved gradually, generation after generation, and this explains why there isn't one universal answer to whether cows or buffalo are food. Almost any large domestic animal can have multiple roles. An animal can be a source of milk, a source of labor, a source of income, a source of leather, a breeding animal, and sometimes a source of meat. The question is, which role becomes most valuable in a particular society? And this is where the idea of better animal becomes misleading. Buffalo aren't simply inferior cows. Cows aren't simply better buffalo. They are different species with different biological characteristics, and humans have shaped their roles differently. In fact, buffalo can be extremely efficient agricultural animals in certain environments. And buffalo meat can be an important food product. Modern research and agricultural organizations have also highlighted buffalo as a potentially valuable source of meat because of its production characteristics and nutritional profile. So why does one become a steak, while another becomes a milk producer, while somewhere else the same animal becomes a sacred symbol? Because humans don't eat animals based on biology alone. We eat according to history, geography, economics, agriculture, religion, tradition, and finally, habit. Once generations of people grow up believing that one animal belongs on the plate and another doesn't, that distinction can feel completely natural. You don't need to make the decision yourself. Your culture already made it for you. And that's why food can tell us so much about human civilization. The animals around us aren't just animals anymore, they become symbols, workers, sources of wealth, family property, religious objects, ingredients, and sometimes food. So the next time you see a cow or buffalo, remember something strange. You might be looking at two animals that can both provide milk, labor, and meat, but humans have given them completely different places in different societies. The difference isn't always what's inside the animal. Sometimes it's what's inside the human culture looking at it. And that's why the question isn't really, why do we eat cows but not buffalo? The better question is, who decided what each animal was supposed to mean? Because when you look closely at food history, you'll discover something surprising. Humans don't simply inherit a menu from nature. We build one.